Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, let's dive into this. Picture the scene. It's early 1992, and one single man basically holds the absolute key to the Indian stock market. We're talking about a guy who didn't come from old money, zero ties to political royalty. He was a salesman turned broker who somehow made everyday ordinary citizens believe that immense wealth was just one single stock trade away. The public enthusiastically dubbed him the Big Bull, but his real name was Harshad Mehta. For a brief, wild period, he essentially bought Dalal Street, manipulating billions of rupees and crowning himself the undisputed king of the market. But you have to ask, how exactly did he do it?
Well, to really wrap your head around the sheer magnitude of this story, just look at this number. Over 4,000 crore rupees. That is the estimated size of his scam back in 1992, which would be equivalent to tens of thousands of crores in today's money. In less than 3 years, Harshad injected these manipulated billions into the financial system. He built an absolute empire for himself, complete with a 15,000 square foot whirly penthouse that had a sea view and, get this, its own mini golf course. But hidden right behind this flashy facade of extreme luxury was a massive structural time bomb, carefully wired directly into the nation's banking system.
Section 1. Rise of the Big Bull. From salesman to stock market king. Harshad actually had lower middle-class beginnings in Gujarat, but he possessed these incredibly sharp observation skills. He very quickly spotted just how painfully slow and manual India's 1980s financial systems were, and he knew exactly how to use that to his advantage.
Section 2. The bank receipt loophole, engineering a financial heist. Now, to understand how he pulled this heist off, we really must look at how banks back then were borrowing government bonds just to meet Reserve Bank requirements.
So the crucial point is how these bank receipts functioned. You see, the Reserve Bank of India required banks to hold a certain percentage of their assets in government bonds. If a bank was running short, they'd borrow from a bank that had a surplus through short-term agreements called ready-forward deals. But physically moving literal mountains of paper bonds? Way too slow. Instead, they used a bank receipt, or BR. It was literally just a piece of paper acting as a placeholder. And these transactions were brokered through middlemen. Middlemen exactly like Harshad Mehta.
What's brilliantly simple yet totally devastating is this four-step structural heist. The fatal flaw was that banks just blindly trusted the broker, depositing funds directly into the broker's account instead of the seller bank's account. So, Step 1, Harshad forged relationships with corrupt officials at small banks who happily issued fake, entirely unbacked bank receipts. Step 2, Harshad takes massive funds from major institutions like the State Bank of India against these fake receipts. Step 3, instead of settling the trade, that money is routed directly into his own personal broker accounts. And Step 4, those thousands of crores are poured like absolute gasoline directly into the stock market.
Section 3. Cult status and madness. The unstoppable bull run. Now let's shift our focus to the absolute market frenzy this stolen capital triggered between 1991 and 1992, because things got crazy.
And this brilliantly illustrates the absurdity of the era. Just look at this staggering percentage. Harshad targeted specific companies, most famously Associated Cement Companies, or ACC. Using his diverted bank funds, he pumped ACC's share price from just 200 rupees to over 9,000 rupees, a 4,500% surge. No way, right? He justified this with what he called the replacement cost theory. It was a convincing but ultimately completely hollow narrative that just kept the market buying.
He wasn't just a wealthy broker at this point. He was a literal cultural phenomenon. The media dubbed him the Amitabh Bachchan of stock markets. He was openly, unapologetically flamboyant. He was gracing magazine covers, boasting about being India's highest individual taxpayer, and driving through the streets of Mumbai in the country's very first imported Toyota Lexus. And retail investors, they blindly worshiped the guy. Thousands of middle-class citizens just followed his every tip. Under his influence, the BSE Sensex shot from 1,000 to over 4,500 points in a matter of months.
But imagine balancing billions of rupees on a ticking clock, because that was the terrifying reality hidden right behind all the glitz and glamour. You see, Harshad's entire paper empire balanced on a tight 15 to 30-day window. Remember, the banks trusted the broker to settle the trade within roughly 2 to 4 weeks. Harshad was effectively borrowing money, pumping the market, selling at a profit, repaying the bank with interest, and just pocketing the massive difference. Because of this extremely tight window, the market absolutely had to keep rising. If stock prices fell even a little bit, he wouldn't be able to sell shares fast enough to cover those looming bank settlements. Tick-tock. Section 4. The expose and crash. The house of cards collapses. Because a system built on artificial stolen capital can only defy gravity for so long before it all comes crashing down. The downfall was remarkably swift. On April 23, 1992, financial journalist Sucheta Dalal broke a groundbreaking story in the Times of India. She exposed a massive 500 crore shortfall at the State Bank of India. The investigation quickly revealed SBI was holding fake bank receipts backed by no real assets, and the trail led straight back to Harshad Mehta. Instantly, panic just ripped through financial institutions and parliament. By June 1992, the CBI arrested Harshad and his brothers. And years later, on December 31, 2001, after a decade of endless legal battles, Harshad suffered a sudden heart attack and died in judicial custody at just 47 years old.
The immediate fallout of that April 1992 expose was just devastating. When the news broke, banks panicked, demanding their money back right away. But Harshad couldn't liquidate his stocks without crashing the market. So, the result? The stock market crashed precipitously. Think about what that actually means for everyday people. Billions of rupees in everyday retail wealth, the life savings of the middle-class citizens who idolized him, wiped out practically overnight. The CBI and other agencies eventually filed over 70 criminal charges against him, meticulously dismantling his entire paper empire.
The aftermath wasn't just financial, it was intensely political. In 1993, while fighting his immense legal battles, Harshad made a sensational public claim. He actually alleged that he had paid a 1 crore rupee bribe to the then Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao in an attempt to clear his name. Now, this allegation was fiercely and officially denied, but it perfectly demonstrates the sheer scale of the legal and political firestorm that engulfed India. The big bull had dragged the highest offices in the land right into his collapsing orbit.
Section 5. Aftermath and Lasting Legacy. Forcing India's Financial Evolution. Let's move to and see how this builds from a catastrophic crime into a massive, forced institutional overhaul.
While the scam was undeniably a dark day for everyday investors, it was the painful catalyst the country desperately needed. It brutally exposed the systemic corruption and technological backwardness of India's financial system. Just notice the stark contrast between these two eras. The 1992 era was defined by highly exploitable manual bank receipts, physical paper share certificates, and totally fragmented systems. But directly because of Harshad Mehta, the modern era was born. SEBI was granted real statutory powers to rigorously regulate the markets. In 1994, the fully electronic National Stock Exchange was launched, and paper share certificates entirely replaced by digital demat accounts. The exact loopholes Harshad exploited were permanently sealed. Honestly, if you trade seamlessly on an app today, you have the fallout of 1992 to thank for those safeguards.
Harshad Mehta exploited a slow, highly trusting system to build an empire out of paper and promises. He proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that human greed can drive markets to unfathomable, completely irrational heights. Today, India's modern financial markets stand firmly on the foundation of the very rules created to ensure another big bull never happens again. But as we reflect on this monumental era of financial history, it leaves us with one seriously provocative question. As technology evolves and markets grow ever more complex, can institutional integrity permanently outpace human greed?